The sickness arrived by ship, spread through the town in days, and killed so many people that the dead outnumbered the living before the season changed. I remember the first bell. It rang in the morning, slow and deliberate, the way it always did when someone important died. We paused when we heard it, hands still, heads lifting slightly. Death was not unusual then. It was part of life. But something about the timing felt wrong. Too early, too sudden. By noon, the bell rang again. By evening, it rang without pause. The ships had come in the week before, docking quietly, crews thin and exhausted. They said the voyage had been difficult, storms, delays, men falling ill along the way. Nothing we hadn't heard before. Trade continued. Barrels were unloaded. Rats ran along the ropes and vanished into the streets. Within days, people began to sicken. It started with fever, sudden and intense. Men who had been working in the fields collapsed where they stood, skin flushed, eyes glassy. Women complained of headaches so sharp they could not lift their heads. Children burned with heat and cried until their voices failed. Then the swellings appeared. Painful lumps in the groin, under the arms, along the neck. They grew quickly, darkening, tightening the skin until it shone. Some burst on their own, releasing foul-smelling fluid. Others stayed closed, hard and tender, a promise of what was coming. People died within days, some within hours. At first, we tried to help. Families cared for their own, bringing water, wiping brows, praying over beds. Priests moved from house to house, administering last rites until their voices grew hoarse. Apothecaries mixed remedies from herbs and spices, burning incense to cleanse the air. Nothing worked. The sickness moved faster than our understanding of it. One household would be healthy in the morning and silent by nightfall. Neighbors stopped visiting. Doors stayed closed. Windows were shuttered even in the heat. The bells rang constantly now. Not just for the old or the weak. Young men, mothers, children barely old enough to walk. The sound layered over the town like a weight, each toll marking another absence. The dead began to pile up. At first, families buried their own in churchyards and small plots outside the walls. Graves were dug quickly and shallow. There were too many. The ground filled. The soil turned soft and dark, disturbed again and again. Soon, there was nowhere left. Carts were brought in. Bodies were loaded without ceremony, wrapped in whatever cloth was available. Sometimes they were not wrapped at all. The carts moved through the streets early in the morning, bells ringing ahead of them to warn people to stay inside. "Bring out your dead," the men called. Some houses opened their doors and handed over bodies silently. Others did not open at all. In some, entire families lay dead inside, undiscovered for days until the smell forced the issue. Mass graves were dug outside the town, wide pits, deep enough to hold dozens at a time. Bodies were layered together, sprinkled with lime, then covered hastily before the next cart arrived. There were no names spoken, no prayers long enough to matter. The priests began to die. So did the men who dug the graves. So did the men who rang the bells. Fear took hold in ways I had never seen before. People blamed the air. They blamed the water. They blamed the stars. Some said it was God's punishment. Others said it was poison spread by outsiders. Rumors ran faster than the sickness, turning neighbor against neighbor. Strangers were driven out. Some towns sealed their gates entirely, refusing entry to anyone, even those begging for help. Others tried to flee, carrying the sickness with them to the countryside, spreading it farther, faster. I stayed, not out of bravery, but because there was nowhere else to go. The streets emptied, Markets closed, work stopped. Animals wandered freely through abandoned lanes. Dogs fed on refuse and worse. Fires burned unattended until they went out on their own. The smell was constant. Death has a smell. Once you know it, you never forget it. It hung in the air, mixed with smoke from burning herbs, with the rot of waste left uncollected, with the sharp tang of fear. At night, the silence was worse than the bells. No laughter, no music, no conversation drifting from open windows. Just the occasional cry of someone realizing too late that they were sick, that there would be no help. I watched a man collapse in the street, and no one went to him. People stepped around the body as if it were an obstacle, eyes fixed ahead, afraid that stopping would be an invitation. That compassion itself had become dangerous. Whole neighborhoods vanished. Houses stood locked and dark, doors never opening again. Fields went untilled, crops rotted where they stood. Livestock starved or broke free and disappeared. The sickness did not care. It took the rich and the poor, the careful and the careless. It moved through monasteries and taverns, through palaces and shacks, through prayers and curses alike. Some said half the town was dead. Others said more. No one knew for certain. Counting had become meaningless. I fell ill in the late summer. It began with chills so violent I could not hold a cup. Fever followed, blinding and heavy. When the swelling appeared beneath my arm, I knew what it meant. I prepared to die. There was no one to call. No one would come. I lay alone, listening to the bells, counting them until counting stopped mattering. The pain was constant, sharp and deep, radiating outward from the swelling. Breathing hurt. Thinking hurt. Time blurred into something without shape. I do not know how long it lasted. Days, perhaps. Then slowly, the fever eased. The swelling softened. I woke one morning and realized I was still alive. Survival felt wrong. Those who lived emerged cautiously, as if stepping into a world that might reject them. We looked at one another with suspicion and disbelief. Familiar faces were missing everywhere. The bells rang less often. Then they stopped. The sickness burned itself out, leaving emptiness behind. By the time winter came, the town was unrecognizable. More than half were gone. Entire families erased. Trades lost. Knowledge vanished with the people who carried it. The living inherited everything. Houses stood empty. Land changed hands without dispute. The rules that had governed life before no longer fit the world that remained. We spoke of the dead constantly, of who had been taken, of how quickly, of what signs had appeared first, of what we should have done differently, even though we knew it would not have mattered. The plague had come and gone like a storm that kills indiscriminately, leaving survivors to rebuild among the ruins. Years later, children played in streets that had once been filled with bodies. Churches rebuilt their congregations. Markets reopened. Life returned, slowly, cautiously. But something fundamental had shifted. We understood then that the world could be overturned without warning. That order was fragile, that no wall, no prayer, no wealth could guarantee safety. When illness spread after that, even ordinary illness, people watched closely, counted fevers, measured swellings, listened for bells that might start again. The ships had come in quietly. The sickness had followed, and in one long year, death had walked through the town until it was full and moved on, leaving the survivors to remember what it sounded like when the bells never stopped.